What would you do if time itself seemed to mock you, pausing at the very moment your past collided with your worst nightmares? I found myself grappling with that question one fateful night in the heart of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. As I walked through the eerie silence of the red forest, my eyes were drawn to a peculiar sight, a wristwatch lodged high in the gnarled branches of a mutated tree, its hands frozen in time, eternally set at 1:23 a.m., the moment of the disaster that changed lives forever. I, Ivan Kovalenko, a former nuclear scientist turned forest ranger, had dedicated my life to safeguarding this desolate land. Each step I took felt heavy with the weight of my memories, the screams of those lost in the disaster, the faces of colleagues who never returned. The red forest was a morbid reminder of my past, a place where life twisted into grotesque forms, where trees pulsed with an unnatural glow and the air buzzed with the remnants of radiation. It was here that I found solace amidst the horror, yet I was always on guard, knowing that danger lurked within the shadows. As I reached up to touch the watch, a chill ran down my spine. The moment my fingers brushed against its cold surface, it sprang to life, ticking backward as if trying to reclaim lost seconds. A static-laden voice crackled through the air, sending shivers down my spine. Don't let the echo escape. I turned, heart racing, as a green mist began to envelop the area, swirling around me like a living thing. The forest, once a silent observer, began to pulse with a newfound energy, and I could see them, distorted silhouettes moving between the trees, their forms twisted and grotesque, leaving radioactive footprints in their wake. My mind raced with the implications. The forest was not just a graveyard of memories, but a living entity shaped by the radioactive fallout that had seeped into its very soul. Years of studying nuclear physics had taught me the delicate balance of energy and matter, but this was something far beyond comprehension. It was as if the radiation had birthed a consciousness, a creature that thrived on the remnants of humanity's hubris. I was no stranger to danger. In my years as a scientist, I had witnessed the destructive power of my work. I had seen the faces of those who had suffered, the families torn apart by negligence and greed. But now I was faced with a new kind of threat. When a group of stalkers, those reckless souls who dared to invade the exclusion zone for their own gain, stumbled into the heart of the forest, they unwittingly unleashed the very entity I had feared. It was a realization that sent icy tendrils of dread coiling around my heart. As I stood there, the weight of my past pressing down on me, I knew I was at a crossroads. I could use my knowledge of nuclear science to try to seal away this entity, to confront the terror it had become, but it would mean risking my life. Or I could let it spread beyond the confines of the forest, aware of the lives it might consume. The choice loomed before me like the shadows that danced in the mist, each option fraught with its own peril. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As night descended upon the red forest, the darkness was punctuated by the eerie glow emanating from the mutated foliage, casting unsettling shadows all around me. I could feel the weight of the air, thick with anticipation, as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for something to happen. The ticking of the watch, now a haunting metronome of my dread, grew louder in my ears, drowning out the whispers of the trees. I was not alone. From the depths of the swirling mist, two figures emerged, their silhouettes barely discernible. At first, I thought they were mere phantoms, echoes of the past. But as they drew closer, I recognized them. Dmitri and Elena, former colleagues from the research facility, stood before me. Their faces were gaunt, eyes wide with fear and desperation, reflecting the toll this cursed land had taken on them. Ivan, Dmitri gasped, his breath visible in the cold air. "We didn't think anyone would be here. We thought you were dead." "Should have hoped for better," I shot back, urgency igniting my voice. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't. help but feel a mixture of relief and anger. Their presence complicated everything. I had spent years trying to leave the shadows of Chernobyl behind, and yet here they were, dragging the past back into my life. Elena stepped forward, her voice trembling. We came to find answers. The rumors about the forest changing, about things happening to stalkers. We wanted to know if it was true. We thought you could help us. Help them? I wanted to scream that I was barely keeping myself together, let alone anyone else. Instead, I took a deep breath, forcing my mind to remain clear. You shouldn't have come. This place isn't what it used to be. The radiation has altered something deep within the forest. It's alive and it's hungry. Dmitri scoffed, a nervous edge to his laughter. Alive? You're talking about a forest, Ivan. Trees don't come alive. As if to punctuate my words, a low rumble echoed through the trees, and the ground beneath us trembled slightly. I sensed a palpable shift in the air, the temperature dropping as shadows danced closer. The moment of disbelief on Dmitri's face shifted to panic, and I felt a surge of protective instinct. I couldn't let them get hurt. Again, listen to me. We need to go back, I shouted, my heart racing. This isn't just a rumor or some ghost story. We're dealing with forces we can't comprehend. But before they could respond, a shrill scream pierced through the night, reverberating around us. It was a sound that shattered the stillness, echoing like a mournful wail of the damned. I instinctively grabbed both of their arms, pulling them close. We need to move, now! As we stumbled through the underbrush, the eerie glow intensified, revealing grotesque figures lurking just beyond the trees. They seemed to watch us, their twisted forms shifting in and out of focus, as if the very fabric of reality was fraying. I could feel the panic rising in Elena, her breaths coming in quick gasps. What are they? Ivan, what is happening? I turned to face her, feeling the weight of my past pressing down harder than ever. I don't know, but we have to figure it out before it's too late. If we don't confront whatever this is, it will consume us. Dmitri's face twisted with anger and fear. You brought us here. You should have known better. Enough, I snapped, my patience waning against the encroaching terror. This isn't the time for blame. We're all in this together now. We need to find a way to stop it before it finds us. As the shadows closed in, I felt the echo of the watch's tick in my veins, a reminder that time was slipping away. I had made a choice to confront my past, and now it was spiraling into something far more dangerous. The forest was alive with dark intent, and I was caught in the heart of it. We had to uncover the truth before the clock struck one last time. With that thought echoing in my mind, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I would protect my friends, face the shadows, and unravel the mystery that had haunted me for so long, whatever the cost. The shadows danced closer, their grotesque forms twisting into shapes that were both familiar and terrifying. I fought the urge to run, to abandon everything I had ever known in hopes of escaping the darkness. But something held me there, an unsettling sense of inevitability. We were bound to this forest, just as it was bound to us. As we pressed deeper into the underbrush, I could hear the whispers again, hushed voices threading their way through my mind, echoing memories I had tried so hard to forget. They were fragments of conversations from the lab, late-night discussions about radiation and mutation, about the forest's strange energy. What had we unleashed? I felt the weight of regret settle heavily on my shoulders. I had thought I was long past that the past was buried beneath the layers of time and trauma. Yet here I was, knee-deep in my own mistakes. Keep moving, I urged, feeling the urgency swell within me. But as we pushed ahead, I noticed something peculiar. Dmitri lagged behind, his gaze fixated on a cluster of pulsating mushrooms, their bioluminescent glow illuminating his face in an otherworldly light. "Dmitri, come on!" I shouted, panic creeping into my voice. He turned slowly, his expression eerily calm. "Ivan, look at them. They're beautiful, like they're calling to me." "No, they're dangerous," I insisted, my heart racing. "We need to focus on getting out of here." But as I grabbed his arm to pull him away, a sudden wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled back, steadying myself against a tree. The bark felt slick, as though it were alive beneath my fingers. That's when I saw it, an image flickering at the edge of my vision, a memory that didn't belong to me. It was a snapshot of our experiments, of us laughing as we played with the very forces that now threatened to consume us. "Why are you shaking?" Helena asked, her voice trembling. I realized she was staring at me, concern etched across her face. I opened my mouth to respond, to tell her I was fine, but the words caught in my throat as another vision seized my mind. The moment the forest had awakened, the twisted trees rising from the ground like monstrous sentinels. Suddenly, I understood. The forest was not just alive, it was aware. It was a sentient being feeding on our fears, our regrets, and it had taken Dmitri. "We need to go, now," I shouted again, but the urgency in my voice was drowned by another piercing scream, this one sharper, more desperate. Elena's eyes widened as she clutched my arm, her grip tightening. "Ivan, listen. What if we're not the ones being hunted? What if we're the ones who've been brought here? What if the forest is watching us?" The realization struck me like a blow. My heart raced as I began to question everything I thought I knew. Had I been lured back here for a reason? Did the forest hold answers to traumas I had buried deep? The pain of my past rippled through me, memories of the experiments, the loss of colleagues, and the heavy burden of guilt that had followed me all these years. Dimitri's laughter broke through my thoughts, but it was twisted, unhinged. "Don't you see? It's beautiful. We're a part of it now." I stared at him, horrified. This was not the Dmitri I knew. The forest had taken hold of him, and I could feel its influence creeping into my mind as well. "Stop!" I screamed, but it was too late. The shadows enveloped us, and the forest echoed with laughter, dark, haunting, and familiar. As my grip on reality began to slip, I understood that the truth was far more complex than I had ever imagined. Our pasts intertwined with the present in a way I never thought possible, leaving me to question not only what the forest wanted, but also who I had become in its grasp. "Ivan." Elena's voice pierced through the chaos, but her face was shifting, blending with the shadows around us. "We need to fight it. We can't let it take us." And just as I opened my mouth to respond, the ground beneath us heaved, sending us tumbling into darkness. In that moment, I realized the forest had no intention of letting us go. It was time to confront not just the shadows lurking in the trees, but also the ones buried deep within ourselves. The darkness swallowed us whole, and for a moment I was weightless, suspended between fear and resolve. I landed hard on the damp forest floor, gasping as the air rushed back into my lungs. Shadows writhed around me, whispering secrets I desperately wanted to ignore. My heart pounded in my chest, a tribal drum beating in time with the chaos surrounding. "Us! Elena!" I shouted, scrambling to my feet. I felt the ground pulse beneath me, a heartbeat synced to my own. I could barely make out her silhouette through the haze of darkness, her expression twisted in a mix of terror and defiance. "Ivan, we have to hold on to each other," she cried, reaching for my hand. I grasped it tight, the warmth of her skin, grounding me amid the chilling shadows. But then I felt it, Dimitri's presence, a cold weight at my back. "You're fighting against something beautiful, Ivan," he called, his voice echoing like a distorted melody. "You're free here. Embrace it." I turned to face him, but what I saw was not my friend. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and the very air around him shimmered with energy. My stomach churned as I recognized the truth. The forest had twisted him, warped his mind, and now he was a puppet dancing to its malevolent tune. "No." "Dmitri, listen to me," I pleaded, my voice raw with desperation. "This isn't freedom, it's a trap." But my words fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the laughter of the shadows swelling around us. Elena squeezed my hand tighter, her breath quickening. "We have to confront it, Ivan. We can't let it consume us." I felt the weight of her fear, the urgency in her voice igniting a spark of defiance within me. "You're right," I shouted, forcing myself to stand taller. "We're not just Victims, we have power. We can fight back. But as I surveyed the darkened forest, I realized the truth. This place thrived on our fears, our regrets, and our pain. It was a mirror reflecting everything we wanted to hide. We have to face it, I declared, my voice steadying. We have to confront the darkness inside us. In that moment, the shadows surged forward, and I could see them taking on forms, figures from my past, faces of those I had lost, colleagues who had paid the price for our recklessness. The guilt I had buried began to surface, clawing at my insides. "No, you're not real," I shouted, shaking my head violently. Elena's voice broke through the cacophony. "Ivan, focus! You can do this!" Her encouragement ignited a fire within me. I turned back to the shadows, my fear morphing into rage. "You won't take us. You don't control us." The darkness recoiled, and I felt a shift in the air. The forest, once a suffocating presence, began to tremble as if unsure of its next. "Move! Together!" I yelled, pulling Elena closer. "We can break free!" As we stood united, I summoned every ounce of strength, every memory of love and loss, channeling it toward the shadows that sought to ensnare us. The laughter turned to screams, and the ground beneath us began to shift again, as if the forest itself was struggling against our resolve. But then, just as victory seemed within reach, I felt a hand on my shoulder, a cold grip that sent a jolt of fear through me. I spun around to see Dmitri, no longer a twisted version of himself, but a reflection of my own fears. "You can't escape what you've done, Ivan," he whispered, his voice low and haunting, and in that moment I realized that the true battle was not just against the forest, but against the shadows of my own past. I had to confront my mistakes, not just for myself, but for Dmitri and for all of us. "I will face you," I shouted, my voice echoing through the dark. "I will not be afraid." As I prepared for the ultimate confrontation, I felt the weight of the forest's gaze upon me. It was time to reclaim my past and confront the darkness, not just of the forest, but within myself. The outcome would depend on the choices I made in this moment, and I knew there was no turning back. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, the weight of the shadows pressing in around me. I felt Elena's hand tighten around mine, a lifeline, in the storm of memories and regrets swirling in the darkness. "You're not real," I shouted again, directing my fury toward the specters of my past, faces of the fallen, each one a reminder of the cost of my ambition. The forest quaked in response, the energy shifting as if the very ground were alive. Dmitri's spectral form flickered before me, a haunting reminder of what I had lost. "You can't escape, Ivan," he whispered again, but this time I felt a flicker of understanding beneath the weight of his words. "You have to acknowledge me. I acknowledge you," I cried out, my voice reverberating in the hollow silence. "I acknowledge all of it, the mistakes, the choices, the pain." The shadows recoiled, and for a moment I felt a glimmer of hope. "But I refuse to let you control me." As I summoned all my strength, the darkness surged forward, threatening to engulf us. I felt the cold tendrils wrap around my limbs, pulling me down into the depths of despair. But with Elena beside me, I fought back, drawing on the warmth of her presence, the shared memories that bound us together. "We are stronger together," I declared, and as I spoke, I felt a surge of energy radiate from our joined hands. The shadows began to dissipate, shrieking as they retreated into the depths of the forest. I could see the dawn breaking on the horizon, a thin sliver of light, cutting through the darkness. Just as the last of the shadows vanished, I felt a jolt, a sharp pain coursing through my body. I stumbled, falling to my knees, gasping for breath. Elena knelt beside me, her eyes wide with concern. "Ivan, are you okay?" "Just give me a moment," I managed to say, though I could feel the scars of the confrontation forming, both physical and emotional. I looked around, the forest still eerily quiet, but the weight of its malevolence had lifted. Dmitri's form flickered one last time, a sorrowful smile gracing his lips. "You've made the first step, Ivan, but this isn't over." And with that, he faded into the morning light, leaving me with a haunting reminder of what I had to confront, not just the darkness of the forest, but the shadows within myself. Helena helped me to my feet, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We find the others," I replied, glancing toward the trees that seemed less threatening now. "They need to know what happened here." But as I stood, I caught sight of something glinting in the underbrush, a shard of glass sharp and glimmering with a strange light. I leaned down to pick it up, a sense of foreboding creeping back in. "What is this?" I wondered aloud, feeling an inexplicable connection to it. Helena's gaze followed mine, her expression shifting from concern to intrigue. "It looks ancient. Do you think it's connected to the forest?" Before I could respond, a low rumble echoed through the trees and an unnatural chill swept across the ground. "We need to go," I said, my heart racing. "Now." As we moved away from the remnants of the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that our battle was far from over. The forest had been silenced for now, but new mysteries lingered in the air, waiting for us to uncover them. And as we pushed through the trees, I realized I would have to confront not only the darkness of the forest, but also the darkness within myself, a journey that had only just begun. With the shard of glass clutched tightly in my palm, I felt a strange energy thrumming through it, a pulse that resonated with the very essence of the forest. As we pushed deeper into the woods, the air thickened with tension. I could almost hear whispers in the wind, secrets begging to be uncovered. Helena glanced at me, a mix of fear and determination in her eyes. "What if this is a key? What if it unlocks something we don't understand?" I nodded, my heart racing. The weight of the past bore down on me, yet the shard seemed to promise revelation. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," I replied, trying to instill courage in my own trembling heart. But as we neared a clearing, the ground began to tremble again, and the air grew heavy with an ominous presence. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, more defined now, swirling like a storm ready to break. Suddenly, the truth hit me. The shard was not just a remnant of the forest. It was a reflection of my own fractured soul, a manifestation of all I had tried to bury. "Dmitri was right," I murmured, realization dawning. "I can't escape my past." I turned to Elena, my voice cracking. "The forest feeds on our regrets. It thrives on our pain." With that understanding, the shadows rushed toward us, a tidal wave of fury and sorrow. I held the shard out, and with a surge of will, I yelled, "I see you! I acknowledge you!" The forest trembled, the shadows recoiling as the light from the shard flared brightly. In that moment, the veil lifted. I saw the lives I had lost, the choices I had made, and the truth that had long been hidden. My ambition had imprisoned me in a cycle of despair. And now, in acknowledging it, I felt an unexpected sense of liberation wash over me. But just as the shadows began to dissipate, I realized the cost of this revelation. The forest was not merely a place of darkness, it held the power to reshape destinies, and as the light enveloped me, I felt the pull of the supernatural, a call to become part of something greater, something darker. "No," I gasped as the forest's energy surged through me, threatening to merge my fate with its eternal night. As the light dimmed, a chilling silence fell over the clearing. I stood at the precipice of a choice, the shard trembling in my hand. I was on the brink of becoming the very thing I had fought against, the darkness within me echoing the whispers of the forest. "Ivan," Helena's voice broke through the haze, "don't let it take you." But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that the truth I had uncovered was far more complex than I had ever imagined. The shadows within me were not just remnants of my past. They were a part of me, entwined in my very essence. As I took a step back, the forest seemed to sigh, a bittersweet acknowledgement of my struggle. "I will not be defined by my darkness," I vowed, but the reality of the situation loomed heavy. The journey ahead would not be easy, and the shadows would always be there, lurking and waiting. With one last glance at the clearing, I turned. To Elena, determination igniting within me. We'll uncover the rest of the truth together, whatever it takes. As we walked away, I felt the shard pulsating in my hand, a reminder of the illusion revealed and the truths yet to unfold. The forest was alive with secrets, and I knew this was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. What would you do if the forest whispered your name as I stood in the heart of Black Hills National Forest, enveloped by towering pines that leaned ominously toward a single point? I felt an unsettling chill crawl up my spine. The air was thick with an inexplicable tension, a heaviness that seemed to pulse with the very heartbeat of the woods. My name, Elias Blackwood, had been etched into my identity as a forest ranger, but that day it echoed back to me from the shadows, a haunting reminder that I was not alone in this sacred place. I stumbled upon an old, weather-beaten suitcase half buried in the forest floor, its surface marred by time and neglect. Curiosity gnawed at me as I knelt beside it, my heartbeat quickening with each creak of the surrounding trees. Inside, I discovered a collection of cassette tapes, their labels faded and worn. As I pressed play on the first tape, a cacophony of whispers filled the air, swirling around me like a sinister breeze. The voice that emerged was chillingly familiar. "Elias, you're already late." In that moment, the wind shifted, bringing with it a suffocating scent of sulfur that clawed at my throat. I glanced up, heart racing, to see dark figures flitting between the trees. All was just out of sight, their presence both alluring and terrifying. The forest had always held secrets, but now they felt dangerously close, as if the very ground beneath my feet was alive, urging me to uncover truths better left buried. For years, I had patrolled these woods, a solitary guardian tasked with protecting not just the trees, but the ancient stories woven into the fabric of this land. Black Hills held a sacred significance for the Lakota people, a realm where the veil between the living and the spiritual was thin. My uncle had once worn this badge, a beacon of safety in a place steeped in mystery, until he vanished without a trace, leaving behind only fragmented tales of voices in the forest. My cabin, nestled deep within the woods, was cluttered with maps and notes, many marked with ominous labels like silent zones. These areas were notorious for their strange phenomena where electronics sputtered and animals behaved as if they were possessed. I had learned to avoid them, but the recent disappearances of tourists, leaving behind nothing but their clothing and personal belongings, had forced me to confront my fears. The forest, once a refuge, now felt like a trap, its beauty laced with an unsettling darkness. The whispers I had heard on the tape were more than mere echoes. They were a warning. I had stumbled into the territory of the whisperers, entities that thrived on human memories and emotions. They were the reason behind the disappearances, feeding off the essence of the lost. As I pieced the puzzle together, I felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on me. Just as I was beginning to comprehend the magnitude of the danger lurking in the shadows, a group of filmmakers arrived, eager to capture the essence of the forest for their documentary. They were drawn by the allure of the unknown, blind to the peril that accompanied their ambition. I faced a harrowing decision. Should I guide them to safety, risking the release of the whisperers into the world, or sacrifice them to preserve the fragile balance that kept this ancient realm intact? But as night fell, the forest transformed. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I knew the time for decision had come. The shadows shifted, the air thickened, and the forest held its breath, waiting for my next move. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest morphed into a realm of shadows, a living tapestry woven with fear and intrigue. The filmmakers, a trio of bright-eyed adventurers, set up their equipment, oblivious to the weight of the whispers that danced around them. I watched them from the edge of the clearing, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. They were strangers, chasing a story that could very well become their last. "Elias," called out Sarah, the enthusiastic director, her camera mounted on a tripod, ready to capture the beauty around us. "Come help us set the scene. This place is incredible." Her voice, filled with excitement, cut through the thickening twilight. I couldn't bring myself to join them. Instead, I lingered at the periphery, torn between my duty as a ranger and the instinctive urge to warn them. But as I stepped closer, intent on redirecting their ambitions, I noticed Tom, the sound engineer, fiddling nervously with his equipment. "Did you hear that?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting something to emerge from the underbrush. I felt a chill sweep through me. "It's just the wind," I replied, though my voice faltered. I could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on us as if it were a living entity, scrutinizing our every move. "Seriously, man, it feels like the trees are watching us," Tom muttered, his face pale. "We should have stuck to the urban legends." His unease was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was tapping into something deeper. But his skepticism was met with laughter from Sarah and Mark, the camera operator, who was busy adjusting the lighting. They brushed off Tom's fears, dismissing them as mere nerves. "Come on, lighten up," Sarah said, grinning. "This is what we came for, the thrill of the unknown." I could see the glint of ambition in her eyes, a burning desire to create something monumental, to capture the essence of a place that had swallowed so many before her. The thought made my stomach churn. "Listen," I said, stepping into the light, my voice steady yet tinged with urgency. "This forest has a reputation. There are places here you shouldn't enter, and you need to be careful. I've seen things, strange things. People don't just disappear without a trace." My warning hung in the air, thickening the tension. "Between us, Elias, come on," Mark interjected, rolling his eyes. "You're just trying to scare us. This is all part of the experience." His dismissive attitude ignited a spark of frustration within me. How could they not see what was unfolding? The forest was alive, and it wanted something from us. "Experience? Is that what you call it?" I snapped, my voice rising. "This isn't just about capturing footage. It's about survival. The whisperers are real." The air grew heavy. With my revelation, silence settling like a cloak over the clearing. The realization that I had just laid bare my fears hung in the space between us, transforming the excitement into a palpable tension. Tom's eyes widened as he met my gaze, understanding flashing across his face. "You believe in them, don't you?" he asked, his voice a whisper now. I nodded, feeling the weight of my uncle's disappearance settle on my shoulders like a shroud. I couldn't let history repeat itself. As the shadows lengthened, I sensed a shift in the atmosphere, an electric charge coursing through the air. The forest began to murmur again, the whispers rising in a crescendo that seemed to beckon us deeper into its embrace. I could feel the pull of the unknown, battling against the instinct to protect these unwitting souls. The choice loomed before me, heavy and unforgiving, to guide them away from the danger or to expose them to the ancient forces that hungered for their presence. Before I could make a decision, a sudden crack echoed through the trees, and I turned, heart racing as the ground trembled beneath our feet. Whatever had been watching us from the shadows had now taken a more tangible form. The forest was awakening, and with it, the reality of my worst fears was beginning to unfurl. As the crack echoed through the trees, I felt a shudder ripple through my body. I turned, adrenaline surging, my instincts screaming at me to run. Yet, my feet remained rooted to the ground. The forest seemed to pulse around us, alive and hungry. I could see the uncertainty reflected in Tom's eyes, and for the first time, Sarah's excitement faltered. Mark, ever the skeptic, had gone pale, his bravado evaporating. "Did you hear that?" Tom whispered, his voice shaking as he clutched His sound equipment like a lifeline. Just a branch breaking, Mark replied, though his voice lacked conviction. I could tell he was beginning to question his earlier dismissal of my warning. The night had become thick with apprehension, each rustle of leaves amplifying our fears. But it wasn't just the sounds of the forest that were unnerving me. It was the memories flooding back, my uncle's laughter echoing through the trees, the last time I'd seen him before he vanished without a trace. I had spent years trying to forget, burying the trauma beneath layers of routine and duty, but now it clawed its way back, raw and insistent. The whisperers had taken him, and I had sworn to protect others from the same fate. Yet here I stood, unable to turn back the clock, my heart pounding with guilt and dread. "I think we should go," I finally said, my voice low but firm. But as I spoke, a chilling wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing the last remnants of daylight. The shadows deepened, and darkness enveloped us like a thick fog. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the underbrush, an apparition, flickering like a flame. My breath caught in my throat. "What is that?" I gasped, pointing. The others turned to see the ethereal shape, and I could feel the shift in their collective energy. Fear replaced bravado as the figure seemed to sway and shimmer, its form indistinct yet mesmerizing. "Elias, what is happening?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she clutched her camera, the device now forgotten in the face of the supernatural. "I don't know," I replied, heart racing. "I've never seen anything like this." The figure appeared to be reaching out to us, its hand stretching toward the ground, as if trying to unearth something buried beneath the roots. The air became thick with whispers, each syllable resonating with my deepest fears and regrets. And then, amidst the chaotic murmurs, a name broke through, a name I hadn't spoken in years. Daniel. My uncle's name echoed in my mind, and I staggered back, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about the forest, it was personal. "Elias, are you okay?" Tom's voice pulled me from the depths of my memories, but I was already grappling with the implications of what was unfolding. I needed to understand why this was happening, why the past was clawing its way back into my present. As the figure began to dissipate, I felt a surge of desperation. I could no longer protect them. I had to confront my own demons. "We can't leave," I said, my voice shaking but resolute. "We need to face whatever this is. It's connected to me, and I can't let it take you too." Tom and Sarah exchanged glances, uncertainty mingling with fear, as Mark stepped forward, his skepticism replaced by something akin to determination. "If you're in, I'm in," he said, his voice steadier than I expected. I nodded, feeling the weight of our shared decision settle over us. The forest was alive, and it demanded answers. But as the last remnants of the figure faded into the night, I realized that our quest had shifted from mere filmmaking to confronting a truth buried deep within the woods and myself. The tension hung heavy in the air, and I knew we were about to uncover secrets that would shake us to our core. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around us like the tendrils of the forest itself, each syllable a reminder of my past, of the choices I had made. I could feel the air crackling with energy, a charged anticipation that hinted at something monumental about to unfold. As I stood there, facing the void where the figure had just been, I knew I had to dig deeper into the mystery that was now entwined with my very soul. "Elias," Sarah said, her voice barely more than a breath. "What do we do?" I took a step forward, heart racing, the weight of my uncle's name echoing in my mind. "We need to call out to it," I said, a sudden clarity washing over me. "Maybe it's trying to tell us something. Maybe it's trying to reach me." Tom's eyes widened, and I could see the uncertainty dancing in them. "But what if it's dangerous? What if it's—" "Too late for what-ifs," Mark interrupted, his bravado returning as he took a determined step beside me. "If we're going to find out what's really happening here, we need to face it head-on. I'm tired of running from shadows." I felt a flicker of hope at his words. Maybe we could do this together. I inhaled deeply, summoning every ounce of courage I had. "Daniel," I called out, my voice echoing through the trees. "If you're here, if you can hear me, show yourself." The forest grew still, the kind of stillness that pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. Then the whispers transformed into a cacophony, a rush of voices swirling around us, each one distinct yet overlapping. "Elias," they called, a chorus of tones blending into a haunting melody. "Find us. Help us." The ground beneath. My feet trembled, and I staggered back as roots began to twist and rise, forming an intricate pattern that seemed to map out a hidden path. "What's happening?" Sarah gasped, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. I looked at the others, my heart pounding as the shadows deepened around us. "We have to follow it," I urged, knowing that this was my moment, the decisive point where I would either confront the darkness of my past or let it swallow me whole. As we stepped cautiously towards the emerging path, I felt something shift. Within me, fear morphed into determination. I had spent too long running, too long letting the past dictate my present. I could feel the weight of my uncle's loss, the guilt that had burdened me for years, push me forward. But as we approached the path, a sudden blinding light shot through the trees, illuminating the clearing. Startled, I shielded my eyes as the light morphed into a figure, an embodiment of everything I had feared. It was not just a spectral presence, it was a reflection of my own guilt, my unresolved grief. "Elias," the figure spoke, a voice that was both familiar and foreign. "You never let me go." The words struck deep, reverberating through my very core, and I froze. My friends stood behind me, their expressions a mix of confusion and terror. "Elias, what's happening?" Tom whispered, stepping closer, but I could hardly hear him over the pounding of my heart. I was at the brink of an emotional storm, teetering between the realms of the living and the lost, and I knew that how I responded in this moment would determine not just my fate, but that of my friends. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength I had left. "I'm ready to face you, Daniel. I'm ready to let you go." The figure flickered, the light intensifying, and I could feel the tension in the air thickening, a palpable force pulling us all closer to the revelation that awaited. Would I find peace, or would I be consumed by the very shadows I had sought to confront? The answer lingered just out of reach, hovering in the twilight between fear and acceptance. The figure before me shimmered, the light wrapping around it like a molten halo. As I steadied myself, the realization dawned on me. This was no mere specter. This was Daniel, my uncle, a fragment of my own grief and regret materializing into something I could finally confront. "You never let me go," he repeated, and I felt a wave of sorrow crash over me, threatening to drown me in memories I had buried deep. I swallowed hard, every ounce of pain I had suppressed clawing its way to the surface. I've tried so hard," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "But I can't keep holding on to you like this. I need to live." The light pulsed, and I could see the anguish etched on Daniel's face, an echo of the life he had lived and the choices that had led him here. I took a step forward, feeling the roots beneath my feet shift, anchoring me to the ground. "I forgive you," I whispered, "not just for him, but for myself. I forgive us." The light flared, blinding in its intensity, and I felt a rush of wind whip around me, as if the forest itself was exhaling. I closed my eyes, embracing the chaos, letting it wash over me. In that moment, it felt as though the weight of the world was lifting. Then silence fell. The light dimmed, and when I opened my eyes again, Daniel was gone. The whispers faded, replaced by a serene stillness that enveloped the clearing. I breathed deeply, the air feeling lighter, yet I could sense the remnants of the confrontation. Lingering just beneath the surface, as I turned to my friends, I could see the impact of the moment etched on their faces. Sarah's eyes were wide, shimmering with unshed tears. "Elias, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. I think so," I replied, but even as I spoke, I felt a heaviness in my chest, the scars of unresolved grief still marking my soul. Mark stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You did it, man. You faced him. But what now?" His voice held a mix of admiration and concern, and I realized that my journey was far from over. Tom, still pale, looked around the clearing. "I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Something about this place, it feels alive." I nodded, the truth of his words resonating within me. "I know, there's something deeper here, something we haven't uncovered." As we began to retreat from the clearing, I glimpsed a glimmer in the shadows, a flicker of movement that sent a chill down my spine. My heart raced. Had we truly resolved everything? "Wait," I said suddenly, pausing to look back. "Did you see that?" Mark squinted into the darkness where I had seen the movement. "See what?" But before I could answer, a low growl rumbled through the trees, chilling the air around us. Sarah shrieked, and we turned to face whatever lay hidden in the shadows. The forest was shifting again, alive with whispers that hinted at new mysteries, new dangers that awaited us. As I took a step back, I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet once more, roots twisting and curling, forming a barrier between us and the unknown. "We need to go," I urged, but as we turned to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. With every step away from the clearing, the shadows loomed larger behind us, and I realized that while I had confronted the specter of my past, new secrets lay waiting just beyond the trees, whispering of adventures yet to come. As we stumbled back through the trees, the shadows behind us seemed to stretch, reaching for us like dark tendrils eager to pull us into their depths. "We need to hurry," I urged, glancing back once more, but the forest felt alive, more than it had moments ago. The whispers were growing louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to weave together in a sinister song. Suddenly, the ground beneath us quaked violently, and I lost my footing, tumbling to the ground. My friends rushed to help me, but as they reached out, I felt a cold, clammy hand grip my ankle, no longer a mere figment of my imagination. I looked down to see a twisted, ghostly figure rising from the earth, its hollow eyes locking onto mine with a hunger that froze my blood. "Elias," Sarah screamed, but the sound felt distant, muffled by the roar of the forest. The apparition seemed to pull me closer, dragging me into the soil, into a darkness that promised no escape. I fought against the pull, desperation clawing at me. "Let me go. I need to live." But the figure only grinned, its mouth stretching impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "You can't outrun your past. It will always find you." I felt the air grow heavy, the shadows thickening around us as Mark and Tom struggled against the darkness. "Fight it!" Mark shouted, but I could feel my strength waning, my friends slipping away, their faces blurring as the shadows consumed them too. In that terrifying moment, I realized that confronting Daniel had opened a door, unleashing something far worse than grief, a haunting that would never truly let me go. As I descended into the void, the last thing I heard was the echo of my own screams, swallowed by the malevolent whispers of the forest, and then silence. The forest returned to its eerie stillness, waiting patiently for the next lost soul to wander into its depths. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. What if the very ground beneath our feet held secrets that could unravel the fabric of reality? I never imagined that the answer would start with a rusted iron hammer, its surface etched with ancient runes, entombed close to a towering oak marked with strange, concentric burn circles. As I unearthed it, the air crackled with an energy I couldn't comprehend, and a sudden gust of wind ripped through the forest, uprooting 3 sturdy pines in a perfect triangle. At the center, I found a weathered metal plaque that read, "Svein the Guardian, 1897. My heart raced, not just from the discovery, but because Svein was my great-great-grandfather, a man who vanished without a trace in this very forest. Am Bjorn Falk, a forest biologist hired by the Swedish government to investigate the alarming and sudden deaths of trees in Tiveden, a forest steeped in Viking legends. My life revolves around this ancient woodland, its towering trees and whispering winds offering both solace and mystery. I have settled into a modest cabin, equipped with scientific instruments and a trove of my ancestors' diaries that detail pagan rituals intended to calm the earth. Despite the unsettling tales shared by local villagers of blue lights flickering through the trees and animals behaving strangely, I remain skeptical. I attributed these anomalies to natural phenomena, perhaps methane leaks or infrasonic waves, until one day I stumbled across bioluminescent fungi thriving only in the areas where the trees had succumbed. The air in Tiveden has a weight to it filled with the scent of damp earth and decay, yet it's also charged with something I can't quite articulate. Each step I take seems to echo the whispers of my ancestors, and the forest itself feels alive, almost sentient. I can hear the rustling leaves murmuring secrets from ages past, as if they beckon me to uncover the truth. But with every revelation, the shadows deepen, and a sense of unease wraps around me like a shroud. As I delved further into my research, I came across the disturbing realization that the bioluminescent fungi were just the visible part of a far more sinister entity. This organism, lurking beneath the surface, released spores capable of altering human perception and choking the life out of the trees. I had tried to warn the mining company, urging them to halt their operations that threatened to disturb the soil, but they dismissed my concerns as the ramblings of a superstitious scientist. Ignoring my warnings, they pierced the ground, unleashing a toxic cloud of spores that infiltrated the local water supply. Now I stood at a crossroads, facing a decision that would haunt me. Should I burn the forest to eradicate the fungus, obliterating its unique ecosystem in the process? Or do I preserve this sacred land, risking the spread of the spores to nearby villages, endangering lives? The weight of my ancestors, the whispers of the forest, and the lives of the villagers pressed heavily upon my shoulders. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As darkness enveloped Tiveden, the air thickened with an otherworldly tension. I had retreated to my cabin, clutching the rusted iron hammer, its runes pulsating faintly under the moonlight. The walls of my sanctuary creaked with the weight of the forest's secrets, but I felt more trapped than protected. My mind raced as I replayed the events of the day, the discovery of the plaque, the bizarre phenomena, the ominous whispers that seemed to rise from the very ground. Suddenly, a loud knock shattered the silence, jolting me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Ingrid, the local historian and librarian, her face pale, eyes wide with urgency. "Bjorn, we need to talk," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I've been researching your great-great-grandfather Svein," she said, her voice trembling. "There's more to his disappearance than just the legends. The villagers believe he was chosen as a protector, a guardian against something dark that lurks in the forest. I think it's connected to what's happening now." My skepticism wavered. "But the trees are dying because of the spores." "Yes," she interrupted, pacing the small cabin. "But I believe it's not just a natural phenomenon. It's alive, Bjorn. It's feeding off the land and the fear of the people. And I think Svein tried to stop it." Ingrid's fervor sparked something deep within me, a mix of fear and an inexplicable sense of purpose. "What do you mean? How could he have known?" "He documented everything in his journals," she replied, pulling a tattered notebook from her bag. "He wrote about rituals, about a force that could either protect or consume the forest. If we can find what he left behind, we might have a chance to understand it." As she thumbed through the journal, I felt a strange pull toward the hammer resting on the table. "This hammer, it's his, isn't it?" Ingrid nodded, her expression shifting from urgency to awe. "It's said that only a true guardian can wield it. It might be the key to unlocking the forest's secrets. My pulse quickened. But what if it's not just a key? What if it's a weapon? Before Ingrid could respond, a sudden crash outside sent us both jumping. I rushed to the window, heart racing. A flash of blue light flickered between the trees, illuminating a figure standing among the pines. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the silhouette. It was a man, tall and cloaked, with features that seemed to shift and shimmer. "Bjorn!" Ingrid gasped, grabbing my arm. "We need to go, now!" But before I could react, the figure turned toward us, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. "You seek the truth," he called, his voice echoing through the night. "But truth has a price." I stepped outside, compelled by a force I couldn't explain. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "I am the keeper," he replied, stepping closer. "I am bound to this land, just as your ancestor was. You must choose, Bjorn. Embrace your destiny, or let the darkness consume all you hold dear." Ingrid tugged at my sleeve, her panic palpable. "We have to get out of here. You can't trust him." But the keeper's gaze held me captive, and I felt a strange connection to him, as if he were a part of the very soil beneath my feet. "Your choice will determine the fate of this forest and its people," he warned, his voice low and grave. I stood frozen, caught between the weight of my lineage and the impending doom looming over Tiverton. The stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined, and my once clear rational explanations began to crumble like the dying trees around me. As the blue light flickered again, the shadows of the forest seemed to stretch and writhe, pulling me deeper into a mystery that threatened to unravel my sanity. I had begun to realize that Tiverton was more than just a forest. It was a living entity, and I was at its center, facing choices that would echo through time. But as the keeper's words echoed in my mind, I knew I had to confront the darkness, head on. I just didn't yet understand how. A chill ran down my spine as I faced the keeper, the weight of his presence pressing heavily on my chest. I could feel Ingrid's grip tightening on my arm, her fear palpable, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. The whispers of the forest seemed to crescendo, filling my ears with a cacophony of voices, familiar, disjointed, and haunting. "You've felt it, haven't you?" he continued, his eyes glimmering like the moonlit sky. "The pull of this place, the call of your bloodline. You are more than a mere visitor, Bjorn. You carry the legacy of the Guardians." In that moment, a memory flashed through my mind. My childhood, spent in my grandmother's home, surrounded by stories of Svein, the Protector. I remembered the painting that hung above her fireplace, depicting a tall man with wild hair and fierce eyes, standing resolute against a backdrop of swirling shadows. I had always thought it was just folklore, tales spun to entertain, but now it felt like a dark truth I had denied. Suddenly, the air shifted, and a sharp cry broke through, the night reverberating from the depths of the forest. Ingrid gasped, and the keeper's expression shifted, darkening. "They are awakening," he said, urgency lacing his voice. "The spores are stirring them, and they will not rest until they reclaim what is theirs." "What do you mean, reclaim?" I asked, my thoughts racing. "What's been taken?" "The guardianship," the keeper replied, his voice low and solemn. "Your great-great-grandfather made a choice, a sacrifice that tethered the balance. But in his absence, the darkness has found a way back. It hungers for a new vessel." I felt a cold sweat trickle down my spine. "A vessel? You can't mean me." The very notion felt ludicrous, but something about it rang true. I had always felt different, like I was carrying a weight I couldn't explain. The strange occurrences around Tiverton, the inexplicable events, had they been drawing me toward this moment? Ingrid's face paled further. "Bjorn, you can't let him manipulate you. This is what he wants, to use you." The keeper stepped closer. "I do not wish to manipulate. I offer you a choice, to embrace the lineage that flows through your veins, or to allow the darkness to consume everything you cherish." His voice echoed with ancient authority, and I felt the forest respond, the ground vibrating beneath me. As I wrestled with his words, a terrifying realization struck me. What if Svein didn't disappear? What if he became part of this darkness, and the forest is keeping him trapped? The thought clawed at my mind, unraveling the fabric of my sanity. Was it possible that I had been drawn back to Tiveden not by chance, but by a dark purpose? Ingrid's expression shifted, revealing a flicker of something unspoken. "Bjorn, there's something I haven't told you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not just a historian. I've been searching for you, for the truth about your family. My grandmother, she was part of a group that opposed your ancestor. They believed he betrayed them." Her words hit me like a blow, forcing me to reevaluate everything I thought I knew. The keeper's gaze shifted between us, and I could sense the tension rising. "Secrets are the roots of darkness," he murmured, almost to himself, "and they must be unearthed." With the shadows closing in and the stakes higher than ever, I realized that the truth was more complex than I could fathom, and I was caught in a web of legacies and secrets far older than I had ever imagined. I had to confront not only the darkness of the forest, but also the darkness within my own family, and perhaps even within myself. "Let's find the truth together," I said, my voice steadying as I turned to Ingrid. "But know this, I won't let the past dictate my future. We will face whatever lurks in the shadows." As the keeper nodded, the air crackled with energy, and I felt the pull of the forest growing stronger. Whatever awaited us in the depths of Tiveden, I knew the journey would uncover not just the fate of the land, but the very core of who I was meant to be. The air thickened around us as I stepped forward, feeling the weight of my ancestors' legacy pressing down on my shoulders. The keeper's presence loomed, a tangible force that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the forest itself. I could sense Ingrid's uncertainty beside me, and I turned to her, desperation and determination swirling in my chest. "We can't let fear control us," I whispered, my voice barely rising above the rustling leaves. Ingrid nodded, but the flicker of doubt in her eyes lingered. What if we're wrong? What if confronting this darkness only brings it closer? Her voice was a threat of panic, but beneath it lay a fierce resolve that mirrored my own. I faced the keeper again, the shadows swirling at his feet like restless spirits. "What do I have to do?" I demanded, my breath steadying. "If I'm meant to embrace this legacy, then show me how." The keeper smiled, but it was a grim expression, one that held the weight of countless burdens. "You must confront the darkness that has taken root in this place, the darkness that wishes to feed on your bloodline. Only then can you decide whether to become the guardian your ancestor was meant to be." Before I could respond, a low growl resonated from the depths of the forest, and the ground trembled beneath us. Shadows coalesced into a figure, unfurling into the shape of a massive wolf, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. My heart raced, and I instinctively stepped back. But Ingrid held her ground, her voice rising. "Bjorn, don't let it intimidate you. Remember who you are." The wolf lunged, its fangs bared, but in that moment, something inside me ignited. I could feel the ancient power coursing through my veins, a connection to Svein and the guardians of old. I summoned that energy, letting it flow through me, and suddenly, I was no longer just Bjorn. I was part of something greater. With a fierce shout, I raised my hand, and a wave of light burst forth from my palm, illuminating the darkness around us. The wolf hesitated, its growl fading into a whimper as the light enveloped it. I could see the shadows retreating, as if they were being pulled back into the earth. But the keeper stepped forward, his voice rising above the chaos. "It's not just the beast you must confront. The true darkness lies within the secrets of your lineage, and only by facing them can you hope to prevail." Ingrid gasped, her eyes darting between me and the keeper. "Bjorn, the truth about your family, what my grandmother believed, it's here. It's all connected." The wolf, now subdued by the light, transformed before our eyes, its form shifting into a man, wreathed in shadows yet undeniably familiar. The realization struck me like a thunderclap. It was Svein, my ancestor, trapped between worlds. "Wake up, Bjorn," Ingrid urged, her voice slicing through the tension. "You have to choose. Will you break the cycle or become part of the darkness? In that moment, I understood the stakes. This was my heritage, my battle. I had to confront not only the entity before me, but the legacy that had shaped my family for generations. The choice was mine, to become a guardian or allow the shadows to reclaim their hold. With a deep breath, I stepped closer to the flickering shadows, my heart pounding in my chest. I will not be a vessel for darkness. I choose light. The words resonated in the very air around me, and the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my next move. As the words left my mouth, a shockwave of energy surged through me, rippling outward like a burst of sunlight. Breaking through a storm, the shadows shrieked, writhing as if they were alive, attempting to escape the wrath of my declaration. Svein's figure flickered, caught between the worlds of light and dark, and I could see the anguish in his eyes, a reflection of the burdens I had inherited. The light enveloped him, and for a fleeting moment, I felt an overwhelming connection, as if I were standing on the precipice of time, staring into the eyes of my past. "Bjorn," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the cacophony of the retreating shadows. "You have the strength to break the cycle. Trust in your heart." But the ground beneath us shuddered once more, and the keeper raised his hand, commanding the chaos. "Do not falter. You must seal the darkness away, once and for all." With the keeper's guidance, I focused my energy, channeling every ounce of strength into a barrier of light that surged forward, pushing against the encroaching shadows. The wolf, now Svein, let out a howl, one that echoed through the forest, a sound filled with both pain and relief. I could feel the weight of generations pressing down on me, but I stood firm, knowing I couldn't back down now. With a final surge, the light erupted, swallowing the shadows whole. A blinding flash engulfed the clearing, and then silence. I collapsed to my knees, panting, the remnants of the dark energy swirling in the air around us. I felt the warmth of Ingrid's hands on my shoulders, grounding me. But there was no mistaking the throb of pain radiating from my chest, a reminder of the battle I had just fought. "We did it," I gasped, looking up at her, though the victory felt bittersweet. "But what about Svein? What happens now?" Ingrid's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "The darkness is contained, but it will not be gone forever. The keeper has warned us that shadows have a way of finding cracks to seep through." She glanced at the keeper, who stood solemnly, his expression unreadable. "You have won this battle, but the war is far from over," he intoned, his gaze piercing into mine. "Your family's legacy is intertwined with forces beyond your understanding. The scars you bear are reminders of the path you must continue to walk." I looked around at the remnants of our confrontation, the lingering shadows retreating into the depths of the forest. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized the weight of his words. I might have fought off the immediate threat, but something deeper remained. As I rose to my feet, I noticed Ingrid's worried expression. "What if they come back?" she asked, fear etched on her face. "They will," I replied, determination igniting within me. "But this time, I will be ready." In that moment, I resolved to uncover the truth about my lineage, about the darkness that had haunted my family, and the mysteries still lurking in the shadows. I glanced back at the keeper, who watched us with a knowing expression. "Seek the hidden truths of your ancestors," he said softly. "In doing so, you may find a way to ensure this darkness does not return." As I turned away, I caught a glimpse of the forest, the shadows no longer threatening, but whispering secrets I couldn't yet comprehend. I felt Ingrid's hand slip into mine, and together we stepped forward into the unknown. That was when I noticed the strange symbol etched into the bark of a nearby tree, glowing faintly. I leaned closer, feeling a magnetic pull, and knew our journey was just beginning. The forest was filled with mysteries, and as we ventured deeper, I could sense that this was only the first chapter of a much larger story waiting to unfold. As I traced the glowing symbol on the tree, a sense of urgency washed over me. This forest was a labyrinth of secrets, and the deeper I ventured, the more I understood that I was not merely a bystander in my family's struggle against darkness. I was a key player in a game that had been unfolding for generations. Each step we took echoed with the weight of the past, and I knew the sacrifices made by those before me were now my burdens to bear. But as we pressed forward, the reality of our situation became painfully clear. To truly protect the light we had fought to restore, I would need to make a choice, one that could sever my ties to the very essence of who I was. The Keeper's words resonated in my mind, urging me to seek the truths hidden in my lineage. Yet I realized that uncovering those truths might come at a significant cost: my freedom. In that moment, I understood the nature of true sacrifice. I could step into the shadows and embrace the darkness, wielding it to banish the encroaching evil once and for all. Or I could renounce that power, choosing instead to stand as a guardian against it, knowing that I might never return to the life I once knew. My heart raced as I weighed the implications. The pain of that choice settled in my chest like a stone. I turned to Ingrid, her eyes wide with concern. I could feel the light of our connection flicker, as if sensing the impending decision. "Whatever happens," I said, my voice steady, "I will choose the path that protects you and the ones we love, even if it means giving up everything." As I took a deep breath, a warmth enveloped me, filling the void of uncertainty. I could feel the shadows lurking, waiting for a moment of weakness to reclaim what was theirs, but I would not let them win. With one final glance at Ingrid, I stepped forward, ready to embrace my fate for the greater good. And as the light surged around me, illuminating the forest once more, I knew this was not an end, but a new beginning, a promise of hope and sacrifice intertwined. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.